What's up, guys? I know a lot of people don't like the Star Wars sequels, but Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, released a little bit over 10 years ago, a couple weeks ago in December. Obviously, it is January now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going through, the movie in a couple different videos. This will be obviously the first one. This will be from the very beginning of the movie to when Rey and Finn meet up. I'm just going to be going through the movie, talking about the characters, just some things about it, the plot, what I like about the film and sort of stuff like that. So let's get into it. All right, so the movie begins obviously with the title cards telling us that Luke Skywalker is gone, which is a very interesting choice. It is the first choice made in these Star Wars sequels that Luke Skywalker, obviously the hero of the original trilogy, is barely going to be in this movie. Obviously, yes, he is in this movie for like 5 seconds, but like that doesn't really matter to this movie. At least, obviously, he is in episode 8 and 9, but for this movie, he's not even in it, which, like I said, is a very interesting choice that people probably weren't big fans of, when the movie came out. Obviously, that's a long time ago. I don't really remember, but, obviously a very, very bold choice. But the movie really begins with just a random planet being engulfed by a Star Destroyer, and we have stormtroopers going to the planet of Jakku to invade, and we later find out that BB-8, the droid, has the map to Luke Skywalker, and Poe Dameron and this old dude are talking about, like, hey, you need to get this out of here, and that's basically the whole setup of this film. Obviously, it introduces us to Poe Dameron, introduces us to BB-8, the Stormtroopers, the First Order, and this old dude who I don't know the name of, but he's there too. But so far, a solid beginning for this film. So the movie really begins with the Stormtroopers attacking on the village on Jakku. They're trying to find the map to Luke Skywalker, and I really like this scene. I think the Stormtroopers are really intimidating throughout this whole entire scene, and I think it's probably the best opening scene in the whole sequel trilogy. Not that that means a ton, because a lot of people hate these movies, and they don't have, like, amazing opening scenes, but I do think it's the best one. Also, Kylo Ren, when he walks out of his ship, is super intimidating. Like, this dude, this dude's about to just go off on whoever has the map. He is ready, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the scene, basically what happens is we get introduced to Finn, who I by far thinks the most interesting character in this film. Obviously, like I said, Kylo Ren. He eventually captures Poe, kills the old man, and BB-8 runs away with the map to Luke Skywalker. Alright, so next we see Rey, who is in a broken down Star Destroyer and scavenging items from it. I really like this scene again because it shows us, who Rey is and, what she's doing before, obviously, she goes off with Finn and helps the Resistance. I really think this is a great scene. It shows how she's alone and how she, gets by trying to, scavenge items. And I think, like I said, it's a great scene, another great scene for the beginning of this movie. All right, next we have a pretty funny scene between BB-8 and Rey, and let me tell you, I think BB-8 might be the most underrated character in The Force Awakens because he's absolutely hilarious as he's trying to force Rey to let him come along to her house. It's a very funny scene, and like I said, BB-8 is very underrated in this movie for sure.
Don't follow me. Town is that way. No!
Alright, so now the scene where Poe and Finn escape the Star Destroyer. I really like the scene because I think it's really funny. Poe and Finn are, hilarious in this movie. I think, throughout the whole entire film, especially in this scene, they're really funny. Along with that, they have a great action sequence in here where they're trying to escape the First Order. Obviously, they do get shot down. They land on Jakku. Poe goes missing, and Finn goes off to find Rey. So that is what I have for this part. Alright, so now for the characters. The first character is Rey. Obviously, she is the main character of the sequel trilogy, and I really like her in this first part of the movie. It's kind of like Luke Skywalker, but not enough to where, it's very similar, and I really like her in the beginning. Alright, so next up is Finn. Now, like I said, by far, I think he is the most interesting character of this movie. A stormtrooper who joins the Resistance and, helps out Rey and helps out Poe and Leia and Han and everybody like that. He's also, I think the funniest character, maybe besides BB-8 in this film, so, if that means anything to you, he is, I think, the funniest character, like I said, besides BB-8 as well. I just really like his character in this film. Obviously, in episodes 8 and 9, maybe it's not amazing, but in this film, he's absolutely great, and I really like his character in here. All right, so next up is Kylo Ren. Now, like I said, he is by far the most intimidating in this first scene when he's going out. He walks out of his ship on Jakku and just, interrogates that old man. He is so intimidating in that part, and I just think he's really great in these first couple scenes of this movie. All right, so next up is Poe. Now, like I said, I really do like the scene with Finn and Poe escaping. I think it's funny. I think those two together are funny. And Poe is just a solid character in this first part of the film. I like Poe in the movie. And yeah, like I said, he's really solid in this so far. All right, lastly is BB-8, and I really like the scene between BB-8 and Rey where Rey's trying to tell BB-8 to go somewhere else, and BB-8's like, hey, I want to stay with you. And I really like that scene. I think BB-8 is absolutely hilarious. But that is it for the first part of the series. Next time, I'll also review more of the movie, and I'll see y'all then.